Good morning. Now is a time when anyone of any age is welcome to come join me up front if you would like a little bit better view. And what a view. Indeed. I have been asked several times if I would please explain my hat. I would say, do you like my hat? But then that would make you think I was sharing Go Dog Go today for the Words for All Ages, which I am not. So I am wearing this hat because it's a tradition to wear a fancy hat the weekend of the Kentucky Derby, which is a very famous horse race. And somehow I managed to catch only the race, the second half of it, yesterday, out of nowhere. And so I found out afterward that I was getting to see, first of all, that the two horses that were just nose and nose at the finish line, the riders of those two horses were brothers, which was wild to me, and also that the winning horse was trained by the first female trainer of a Kentucky Derby winner. So that was pretty cool. So thank you, Nan, for the suggestion to dress up because it has been fun. And there are some other fun people hiding in here today that you might spot during coffee hour wearing fancy hats or fascinators, which are smaller hats, but they're meant to be fascinating. So, and I'm also thinking about our joys and sorrows today because I heard some beginnings and some endings in our joys and sorrows today. But most of our relationships with each other happen in the in-between. And sometimes the beginnings and endings make us think that the in-between is supposed to be perfect, right? Like it's supposed to all be wonderful the whole way through. And that's just not how being people works. How many people here have, on one or more occasions, found another human being kind of annoying? How many people here have a suspicion that on one or more occasions they themselves may have been annoying? Yeah, this is true. So I'm going to share a story with you today that's actually one of Reverend Dawn's children's stories that she likes. It's called Rosie and Michael, and it has to do with friendship and our relationships in between, right? And so I'm really excited to share this with you. And let's see here. And the cover looks like that. And it's also by a children's author I really, really like. Judith Viorst wrote, if you ever have heard the story, Alexander and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, right? That's Judith Viorst. She tells it like it is. So here we go. Buckle in, my friends. So, Rosie and Michael. Rosie is my friend. She likes me when I'm dopey and not just when I'm smart. I worry a lot about pythons, and she understands. My toes point in and my shoulders droop and there's hair growing out of my ears, but Rosie says I look good. She is my friend. Michael is my friend. He likes me when I'm grouchy and not just when I'm nice. I worry a lot about werewolves, and he understands. There's freckles growing all over me except on my eyeballs and my teeth. But Michael says I look good. He is my friend. When I said that my nickname was Mickey, Rosie said Mickey. When I said that my nickname was Ace, Rosie said Ace. And when I was Tiger and Lefty and Ringo, Rosie always remembered. That's how friends are. And when I wrote my name with a Y, Michael wrote R-O-S-E-Y. When I wrote my name with an I, Michael wrote R-O-S-I. And when I wrote R-O-S-E-E and R-O-Z-I and W-R-O-S-I-E, Michael always did too. That's how friends are. Just because I sprayed Cool Whip in her sneakers doesn't mean that Rosie's not my friend. Just because I let the air out of his basketball doesn't mean that Michael is not my friend. When my parakeet died, I called Rosie. When my bike got swiped, I called Rosie. When I cut my head and the blood came gushing out, as soon as the blood stopped gushing, I called Rosie. She is my friend. When my dog ran away, I called Michael. When my bike got swiped, there are a lot of bike thieves in their neighborhood, I called Michael. When I broke my wrist and okay, I'm censoring this part just slightly because I can't do it. As soon as they stuck it back in, I called Michael. He is my friend. It wouldn't matter if 2 billion people said she robbed a bank. If Rosie told me she didn't, I'd believe her. Even though his fingerprints were found all over the dagger, if Michael said, "I'm innocent," I'd believe him. Just because I dug a hole and covered it with leaves and told her to jump on the leaves and she fell in the hole doesn't mean Rosie's not my friend. Just because I put a worm in his tuna salad sandwich doesn't mean Michael's not my friend. I gotta be honest, we'd have to have a conversation about that. Just saying. Rosie is my friend. I sold her my yo-yo that glows in the dark for only 50 cents, and I would have charged Alvin Alpert 75. Michael is my friend. I traded him my wiffle bat for only 14 marbles. It would have been 20 marbles for Alvin Alpert. If Rosie told me a secret and people hit me and bit me, I wouldn't tell what Rosie's secret was. And then if people twisted my arm and kicked me in the shins, I still wouldn't tell what Rosie's secret was. And then if people said, "Speak up or we'll throw you in this quicksand," Rosie would forgive me for telling her secret. If Michael told me a secret and people clonked me and bopped me, I wouldn't tell what Michael's secret was. And then if people bent my fingers and wrestled me to the ground, I still wouldn't tell what Michael's secret was. And then if people said, "Speak up or we'll feed you to these piranhas," Michael would forgive me for telling his secret. Just because I call her a gorilla face, did I miss gorilla face? Dear me. Doesn't mean that Rosie's not my friend. Just because I call him a banana head doesn't mean that Michael's not my friend. Sometimes I get on the diving board and decide that I've changed my mind, but Rosie doesn't laugh. She is my friend. Sometimes I'm climbing up a tree and decide that I'd rather climb down, but Michael doesn't laugh. He is my friend. If Rosie bought me an ice cream bar, it wouldn't be toasted almond. If Rosie bought me a shirt, it wouldn't be green. If Rosie bought me a book, it wouldn't be How Your Sewer System Works or Sven of Sweden. You can count on a friend. If Michael bought me some candy, it wouldn't be licorice, which I think is a missed opportunity. How many people here are pro-licorice? I'm gluten-free now. I can't have licorice anymore. It's a tragedy. If Michael bought me a scarf, it wouldn't be brown. And if Michael bought me a book, it wouldn't be Know Your Lungs or Dances of Costa Rica. You can count on a friend. Even though I was voted most horrible singing voice in the class, Rosie says that Alvin Alpert sings worse. Even though I was voted bossiest person in class, Michael says that Alvin Alpert is bossier. Poor Alvin, he's kind of a scapegoat in this situation. Rosie is my friend. When she honest and truly wanted to know if she walked like a kangaroo, I honestly told her. Michael is my friend. When he honestly and truly wanted to know if his feet were smelling stinky, I honestly told him. Rosie would try to save me if there was a tidal wave. She'd hunt for me if kidnappers stole me away. And if I never was found again, she could have my Instamatic, which is a camera, by the way. She is my friend. Michael would try to save me if a lion attacked. He'd catch me if I jumped from a burning house. And if by mistake he missed the catch, he could have my stamp collection. He is my friend. I'd never get my tonsils out if Rosie didn't too. I'd never move to China without Michael. I'd give her my last piece of chalk. I'd give him my last chiclet, which is gum, by the way. Rosie is, Michael is my friend. Thumbs up indeed. And now, let us sing our way out to our religious exploration small groups.
This reading is edited from the 2000 Berry Street lecture. After running through the thistles, the hard part begins, by the Reverend Dr. Mark D. Morrison Reed. The baptismal font was older than the building. It had accompanied the First Unitarian Society of Chicago when the congregation moved south to Hyde Park. The years had dulled the white marble. At age 4, I stood next to that font, waiting with anticipation. Beside me was my brother. We were wearing matching plaid sports coats. Behind us, our baby sister squirmed in my dad's arms. The minister, Leslie Pennington, had white hair, wore a black robe, and when he said, "Name this child," both of my parents said, "Mark Douglas Reed." The minister reached into the font. Then, as he touched my forehead with a drop of water, he repeated my name. I felt he was sort of like God. Returning to Chicago at age 25, a vagabond entering Meadville, Lombard, I discovered the congregation was excited about my decision to enter the ministry. My marriage and ordination, and my mother's and my sister's memorial services were all held within that living community. As the Christmas candlelight and the flower communion services marked the cycle of the year, these rites of passage marked the cycle that is my life. I am at home among these people in this liberal religious movement. It is a place where I was nurtured, and because I was nurtured, I grew. Having grown, I could give, and having given, I grew more. It is a place where struggling, I could fail. Where failing, I was still loved. Where loved, I could begin again. It is a place where in pain I could go, where having gone I was cared for, where cared for I could heal and go on. That is why I am a minister, to help sustain religious communities, places like the one in which I grew up, places made holy by what people experience within them, the seasons of their lives and the healing of their souls. The power of community is enormous, and I have lived my entire life in its embrace. It is why I entered into the ministry. I believe the liberal church is worth devoting a life to, my life, in fact. My years as a congregant did not prepare me, however, for a cruel irony. Ministry is a source of unrequited grief. I regret not having read the fine print. If I had, perhaps I would have made another choice. But the print was very small, the phrasing paradoxical. While I was young and eager, this is what it said. You want me to get through this, huh? You will love your parishioners with all your heart, but never befriend them. You will pour out your lifeblood for the community, but never settle there. You shall die to the congregation so that the ministry might live.
I grabbed my tissue. Friends. Friends are so important, aren't they? Not the social media version of friendship where you might follow someone's postings and occasionally comment on what the other person has posted. While that might lead to real friendship, I'm talking about friendship as people who care about each other, who trust each other, who mutually support one another. As we heard in our Words for All Ages, friends are there for us. They remember things about us. They tell us when we look great. They help us out when we need a friend. There's a saying that friends help you move, but real friends help you move bodies. And that's not that far off. Friends celebrate with us when we're happy. They cry with us when we're sad. I know that when I have something big or good or bad, the first people I want to connect with are my friends. And we do the same for them, right? We're there for them in the good and the bad and the ups and the downs, which might make what I'm about to say seem a bit strange or off topic. And I hope that at this point, most of you trust me enough to know that I speak this truth into you in love. Your minister is not and cannot be your friend. Now, don't get me wrong. This doesn't mean that we ministers aren't friendly or that we don't care deeply, deeply about you. We are friendly and we do care so deeply. But there are some important differences about what it means to be your minister and what it means to be your friend that I want to talk about, especially because as I am on my way out, so many of you have kindly reached out and extended your friendship to me, and you will be inclined to want to be the friend of your new minister when he arrives, and he will say no for these reasons. In a lot of ways, your minister looks like your friend. Hopefully you know that your minister cares about you, and hopefully you care about your minister. And there's definitely a deep degree of trust and support between a congregant and their minister. The kicker is that the relationship and the support should not be reciprocal. As much as your minister cares about you, you should not be a part of your minister's emotional support network. In our message for all ages, Michael calls Rosie when his parakeet died and when he got hit in the head and the blood came gushing out. And Rosie called Michael when her dog ran away and when her bike got swiped. This is mutual support. It is the reciprocity that comes with friendship. And while you can and should call your minister at times like this, your minister should have their own support network for when things like this happen to them, to us. Reverend Dr. Mark Morrison Reed summed it up beautifully in his Berry Street lecture in 2000, which we heard an excerpt of just a moment ago. Speaking to other ministers, Reverend Mark said, "You will love your parishioners with all your heart, but you will never befriend them. You will pour out your lifeblood for the community, but never settle there. You shall die to the congregation so that the ministry might live." And then later in the essay, he continues, "The relationship of minister and parishioner has the qualities of friendship, but no matter how warm and deep and authentic the relationship is, it is not a sustainable friendship." Why, he asks? Because it is built upon an unavoidable imbalance. The minister is always more responsible for the relationship. When necessary, we ministers must be prepared to forsake the role of friend for that of minister, and ready to choose the well-being of the community over the needs of the friend. We are not as free to share all aspects of our lives and ourselves, nor can we make friends with whom we please, for that would create two classes of parishioners, the chosen and the not. Finally, he says, when our ministries come to an end, so must the relationships, lest we take up space the next ministry needs in order to take root. There is a lot in those words from Reverend Mark. Having loved and served and left congregations multiple times, I can tell you that this is hard work, that keeping these boundaries is not always clear or easy. And I can tell you that good ministers share so deeply and authentically with congregants that it may feel like a deeper friendship than some people know in other areas of their lives. But it is essential for the long-term health of the congregation and of future ministries that a minister maintain healthy boundaries such that this relationship will always be different and differentiated from true friendship. So let's unpack together those 5 assertions that Reverend Mark makes just a bit more. First, he says, when necessary, ministers must be prepared to forsake the role of friend for that of minister. There may come a time when you need your minister. It may be that you need us to show up for you at jail and you're too mortified to call your friends. It may be that you need us to hear a confession that you cannot make to anyone else and trust that it will go nowhere. It may be that you are going through an existential crisis and feel like you have worn out all your other friends, but you know your minister will be there for you. Or it may be that you're engaging in something immoral and unethical, the sort of thing a friend might not call you on, but a minister will. Sometimes you need your minister to speak the truth in love to you in a way that a friend won't, for fear of damaging the relationship. And sometimes you just need your minister. Second, Reverend Mark says that ministers must be ready to choose the well-being of the community over the needs of a friend. This particularly comes into play when congregants are in conflict and the minister needs to remain neutral. For example, if you and your spouse are going through a divorce, if the minister is your friend, then the minister is not going to be able to minister very well to your soon-to-be ex-spouse, who may really need their minister. Or flip the tables. How would you feel if your minister was friends with your soon-to-be ex? Would they be able to minister and would you be able to go to the minister and trust that they would be able to be there for you? Another example where this comes up is when there are policy disagreements in the congregation. That never happens. When a minister needs to be relied upon to put the congregation first, not their relationship with somebody who may be a part of the disagreement. For a minister, the congregation must always come first. Third, Reverend Mark shares that ministers are not as free to share all aspects of our lives and ourselves. This is part of the way the relationship between minister and congregant is not reciprocal. Friends are people you can kvetch to about your job, and the people you work with, and those crazy volunteers. That would not be healthy for a minister to do in a congregation. Friends are also people that you can go to with problems in your relationships. Also not appropriate to bring to congregants and can even be harmful to them. This doesn't mean that ministers can't share some aspect of our lives. We can and we do, but the disclosure must be appropriate and take care to not harm someone else in the sharing. We must always bear in mind that anything we share must be appropriate for the entire congregation to hear. Fourth, Reverend Mark points out that if we did make friends in the congregation, that would create 2 classes of parishioners, the chosen and the not. I've seen multiple congregations where a former minister would go on vacation with parishioners that they had developed friendships with. This often left others in the congregation wondering why they didn't get special treatment. Didn't the minister care about them as well? Or if those friends got a new leadership position, one would assume it was because they were close to the minister, not because of that person's qualifications. This can cause a deep divide in a congregation. It can cause lack of trust in other congregants, in the minister, and even the ministry of the congregation. Finally, as Reverend Mark wisely reflects, when our ministries come to an end, so must the relationships, lest we take up space the next ministry needs if it is to take root. Ministry is a role that we fill for the community, and when we leave, another person is going to come and fill this role. Going back to the example of a minister who would go on vacation with parishioners, having been in this situation myself, where I was a new minister and I had congregants who would go on vacation with a former minister, I wondered things like, do they talk about me and my ministry when they're together? Who will they call if they have a crisis? Is my colleague actively trying to undermine my ministry? These are not fun things to wonder about, nor are they healthy or productive things for the new minister to spend their energy on. Reverend Mark shares that one new minister found that he had to call the minister who had been there before his immediate predecessor to find out what was really going on in the congregation. Trust me, this feels neither good nor is it healthy. When we leave, we must do so that another can fill this important role. For all of these reasons, Unitarian Universalist ministers have enshrined these convictions in the covenant that we ministers promise to uphold, a covenant that is contained within the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association Guidelines for the Conduct of Ministry. One of the items that we UU ministers have sworn to abide by is the ethical standard that we will not use those we serve to meet our own personal emotional needs, that instead should be met through family, friends, therapy, self-care, and in other ways. And in the expectations of conduct section, we covenant to support the well-being of the congregation and its future ministry in our leaving process and after we have left a ministry. In fact, there's a whole section about how we are supposed to leave a congregation in such ways that will benefit future ministries. These are not merely suggestions. These are guidelines. They are ethical standards and codes of conduct that we ministers promise to uphold for the sake of the greater, larger ministry. It's not personal. It's ethical. I have been with you all now for nearly 3 years. That's a long time for an interim ministry, long enough to share some of the hardest and most beautiful moments of your lives, long enough that the caring between us is real and deep. And that is exactly why what I'm about to say matters so much. When I leave this summer, I will leave well. Not because I want to, but because it is what healthy ministry requires. This isn't unique to me. This is true of every minister who has served you. Reverend Jamie talked about this when he left, and now it is my turn. And I know it was particularly complicated with Reverend Jamie because he was your friend before he was your minister. So it gets a little confusing, which is why I'm giving this sermon in the first place. This summer, I will step back from this congregation so that Reverend Josh can step fully into the role of your minister. You are welcome to follow me on Facebook or read my Substack. You are welcome to keep up with my public adventures, but I will not be available for the kind of connection that we have now. If something comes up that you would have brought to me, you will bring it to Reverend Josh instead. I will refer any pastoral needs that you share with me with him and pass them to him. This is one of the last and most important gifts that I can give you, a clean and loving leaving. Ministers are usually pretty friendly, and when we speak our truths authentically, you can get to know us pretty well. And you can count on us to be there for you when things are hard for you, to laugh with you, to cry with you, to wonder with you. But it is our responsibility as clergy to get our emotional needs met elsewhere, in our relationships with colleagues, our families, our friends. That doesn't mean we don't love you. We do. I do. And here is what I want you to hold on to. The time that we have shared is real. It has changed me. And I hope it has changed you. You will always be a part of who I am as a minister. And I will always carry something of this congregation with me. That is sacred in and of itself, not because it's friendship, but because it is ministry. We have done good ministry together. And ministry leaves a mark on everyone it touches. Because I love you, UUI, I choose to leave well, so that what comes next for you can be just as powerful, or maybe even better, than what we have shared. May it be so. May we, together, make it so.